Hello and welcome to another episode here in the post-production part of the texture series. And you can see here already our main theme here. I want to talk about this table that we have seen already in a different way. And this was done with polarization filters to extract the reflection map out of it. So let's hop over to Photoshop, and here we start already to load in several images that I have shot with different positions of the polarization filter. And to work with these files, I want to load them in a stack because I need them all at once in one file, and I load them here. I do not try to attempt them or put them in Smart Objects, so I have accelerated here the load in process. And here we go. We have first to check, of course, what we got. And based on the angle where the view axis hits the table, we have a different kind of polarization strength or effect. And so we have different images with different polarization rotation. And each of them has a little bit more or less. And of course, one should have nearly no reflection in it, and one should have a lot of reflection and everything between. So to find out which one is now the best and the least is, of course, up to you if you shoot something like that, or we can automate this process, which I do here. I place them all just into a Smart Object, and I have accelerated this here. So in the first calculation is here minimum, and that is now done with all these pictures here. So I make a copy of that result, and then I go and have the maximum. And between minimum and maximum, I have now always exactly, hopefully, the most reflection and the least reflection. Because when we have less light coming per reflection, then it should be darker. So I can go now here and find out how it works between min and max, and the multiply here works in this case the most, but sometimes difference is the best way. And I have set them up. I put a curve on top of that to get here the most out of it. So with this curve adjusted, we can go ahead and we try to find a little bit more. And because we have a lot of color here, we can use this time the color range to fix some stuff that I haven't gotten with the polarization filter. And this is of course a fix. This is not standard procedure, but of course I try to get always a little bit more problematic cases here, so I can go into those areas. We might have not always color, we might not have always bad reflection differences or whatever. And here I had even the table wet, so even the concrete was a little bit reflective. And what I do here now is to add always my results from the color range, and I add this into the same mask again and again, and then I get here a mask that has maybe all my points that were weak before in my adjustment here. And so I can call up this mask and put this then later on top of it. And you can see here with the colors that I have, I can play even with the black and white filter. That would be an alternative to the color range, because we are after here a black and white mask. And what we want to have here is of course a nice differentiation between the very reflective parts and the table. As I said, the table was wet, so there's some reflection. Perhaps you want to have this. Then all these steps here with dodge and burn is of course against this target. And with a little brush, the few little spots healed is always a good idea. So I do not pretend that this is a one-click only procedure. And what I have done here is to just take another copy from the table, blur it a little bit, and set this then in a way that I can mix this with the mask that I have done before. And with two different informations in a layer shader, for example, I can adjust inside of Cinema very simply what I need finally. Sometimes details are nice, sometimes a little bit more blurry, and less details are perhaps the better way. So let's go now to our image, and we need one image for the texture, of course, even if we talk the whole time about reflections. But this shouldn't be just a table with like chrome plates on it on black. We need, of course, the original texture. And so we have to find now the texture that is pretty much the darkest from this series, because every reflection will add light to it. There's no reflection that can take it away. And so when we have no reflection in the texture, then it should be the darkest, and we can use, of course, our histogram for that. So name them always wisely, because when we clean up finally, that means we have saved our file first, then we take a look what we urgently need, and whatever is not needed goes then into the trash bin. We have saved it, and after that step we should name everything in the way we want and make maybe a copy, because we go then to the next step. What I do here is to undisturbed now the table. This is maybe not a very interesting part, and I take here some time because I want to give you an idea why I do not shoot this from the top, which would be possible, of course, even with a table that I can put on the side. But I have to stay out of the reflection, of course, when the reflection is exactly facing me. Then we will have trouble, of course, when I put myself into it. So the little angle in our view is certainly on purpose, and what I have done here is to use the transform tool, and with the circle that I have created, because the table is just round, I use here for each and every layer again the same transform that works as long as you haven't used the transform between. Then I put here a little bit around the frame, and I fix this up, of course, in case my table is just a tiny little bit bigger, and then I have a seam around this. Not very funny when you have maybe this used in the bump map, for example, and then you have that ring around. So that's pretty simple here. And then we come already to the part where I say, okay, we have to go a little bit further. So stamp tool to get all of that stuff into the borders here. And finally, we end up in Cinema 4D, and this was the one that we had before. Let's build this with our new table here, so our new texture. And again, we have to wait here because we have now layers, and I supply this here now in the color, in the reflection, in the bump, and perhaps maybe later in the displacement map. So with the reflection full on, I get maybe here my chrome table. This is also a little bit too artificial, so I go much lower, and I want to see, of course, in the reflections a little bit the color. I'm not really convinced so far, so I put some objects in to see how the reflection works with direct contact, and I have used on the end just the color image in the bump channel because I had the most details in it. It's a cheap trick, but it works sometimes very nicely, and I think this looks not that bad. Displacement is on, by the way, here, 0.5 centimeter. Thanks for listening, have fun with it, bye bye.